Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. One of the beautiful things about free speech is that we can express ourselves without being afraid of, negative consequences. I'm talking about being fired, being arrested, being, supposed to denounce certain things or requested, required. And unfortunately, there are some people who are thinking in a certain kind of framework where they look at the first step only. And they are blinded by, how should I put it? I don't want to say hatred, but their subjectivity, that they could not see the implications of whatever they ask for. But unfortunately, here it doesn't work like in the Bible, ask and you'll be given. Because if we all ask certain kind of things that I ask will be against what you ask, so then how are we going to figure things out here? Now, I'm talking about the mayor of Kiev, one of the former heavyweight boxing champions, Klitschko, and I think he is Vitaly Klitschko, the mayor. And he makes some statements regarding the athletes, the Russian athletes and the Belarusian athletes, that now it's a discussion if they should participate in the Olympics in Paris. And Mr. Klitschko shows up and he says, no, they should not be allowed unless they publicly denounce war. Now, I know that Mr. Klitschko is very upset with what's happening to his nation. I understand that one, but for his subjective pain and situation, you can't ask something that could turn into something else in two steps. Because if you look in history, there were a few countries, a few ideologies, a few parties that really did this. You had to show up in public, maybe on a stadium, in front of people and denounce certain kind of ideologies, maybe your parents, maybe certain kind of things that you might have done, and then some were executed after that. And I don't know if Mr. Klitschko understands that or he knows about that. If he understands and he knows about these things, these historical events, now that's even worse. Now let's see what Mr. Klitschko had to say. As I said, I liked him as a boxer, but I don't think as a politician or, is really, the sharpest tool in the toolbox. So this comes from France 24, and it is from the 13th of February 2023. Kiev Mayor Klitschko says Russian athletes must denounce war to compete at Olympics. And we read here that Russian athletes should publicly denounce the war if they are to be allowed to participate in the 2024 Olympics. Kiev mayor and former world boxing champion Vitaly Klitschko told Agence France Presse Monday, and I'm quoting Klitschko, Russian and Belarusian athletes can't participate in the Olympic Games in Paris if they don't say no to war, end quote, Klitschko said. And I'm quoting again, if they publicly express against this war, not the war, this war, they can participate. But they are afraid, the former heavyweight boxer said. Russia and its ally Belarus, which allowed its territory to be used as a launchpad when Moscow began its invasion of Ukraine last February, have been sidelined by the most Olympic sports since the war began. Actually, that's about, I think, 40 countries that oppose. The rest did not say anything about it. Now, let's analyze this. I know the Communist Party and some leaders required, to come publicly and denounce your wicked ways and your capitalist way and so on. I know you were supposed to denounce your parents in some communist situations. And not only your ideology, some of these guys, after they denounced it publicly during the trials, the mock trials, they were shot. Now I know the Nazis, the evil Nazis, did the same thing with some of the, people who collaborated with some entities, and then they were shot by Gestapo and so on, in court or not in court. And I know also another country which unfortunately it's not of any persuasion as the communists or the Nazis. This is the United States of America. If you remember, and I know you don't want to remember because it was a dark spot on United States' past, one of them. We all have them, each and every country has it, but China. Now, what happened? Do you remember the McCarthy era? So it was a time in the United States, past century, after the Second World War, where it was the Red Scare, the second one. It was one, I think, in between the wars. So there were some accusations that some people collaborate or are members of the Communist Party, and they had to denounce publicly that they are not, in court or publicly and so on. And they were hunted for that and investigated and so on. Now, I know that's not really okay, but that happened in the freest country on planet Earth that ever existed. So, Mr. Klitschko's statement sounds to me very much like a communist statement. And just look at it. I'm going to go and read something here. His statement reads like this. Russian and Belarusian athletes can't participate. So if he would have the power, he would not allow these people unless they say no to war. And then down here it says this war. Well, I think that this is a thing that you ask some young adults who just want to compete. Their only goal is to go and win. They sacrifice their lives, their time, and they hope they will be the first. That's all they care. Now you drag them in politics. Some of them don't know anything about politics. Some of them don't know anything about, history and so on. You ask them to denounce something, or at least war. Let's start with a war. You want them to denounce war. I would say if we go by that, we should ask everyone to denounce war. And then everyone should go outside and denounce war. But if we do this, we open the door to something else. Now, if you want only the Russians and Belarusians to denounce war because your situation, next time you're gonna ask some people to denounce what? Their family? Or maybe their beliefs? Maybe their religious affiliations? Maybe they will be asked to pledge allegiance to, let's say, equity or diversity. And if you don't do that, you can't participate in society. So I'm not concerned with I understand Klitschko's pain, but for his subjective little pain that he has, or big pain that he has, if we fall for that, that would open the doors for next step and the next step and next step. Nobody can stop us to say next time that some countries say, okay, this is wrong. Okay, because you say so. Because certain people in Russia don't think that's wrong. They think that they are under attack. That's different perspectives. I know Russia attacked Ukraine, with no explanation, unprovoked and all that. Some people have a different opinion, and they are Russians. Do you ask them to say, well, you have to denounce your country's war against their vision, maybe think that they're attacked by NATO? What do you want them to do? To think right? I mean, look on this planet. How many countries think that the war is as is expressed? And we are supposed to look at it that way. If you don't look that way at the war, then somehow you lose your job or something. Is that the next step? Can you have different opinions? And then you tell an athlete to tell his elected officials or be against his countries that they're at war, if you want to put it that way. And what are they supposed to do? Even though they call it a special operation, whatever you want to. They think that they are going to be destroyed by NATO. That's what they think. So you tell them to say, yes, I I'm opposing my government's war. I state that publicly, so I can compete over there. You want them to be arrested, or what if those guys are crazies? And you're going to say, well, at least you died peaceful. I don't think you have the power to do that. So what I'm afraid is that this kind of pledge allegiance in front of everyone, I think that is wrong, and is wrong because it opens the door to something else. That's why. And I understand Klitschko's pain, but I don't think that any person who practices sports and goes to participate should be required to do this before he goes over there. Next time he's going to what? Pledge allegiance to the President of the United States of America? Otherwise we can't. Why? Because he's the strongest or the best? Or this sounds like a religion, and the religion, if you are against us, you go on a certain kind of stake. I don't want that to happen. Well, I saw this kind of behavior, for instance, when I was a child in communist Romania, and it was kind of the same way. You have to pledge allegiance, and if you did something that was wrong, you were supposed to confess your wrongdoing in front of the classroom or the collective of employees, and make a show that you are ashamed of this and that. What's going to be next? You're ashamed of your country of origin, your nationality. What are you then going to go further and further? You're going to start crying, and you don't show enough, remorse. What's going to be next? So I think this is a wrong way to go. And I think Klitschko can say whatever he wants, but I think from this perspective, I think he's just he has a tyrant mentality. And I hope he doesn't get in a certain position of power. Global power. Is too bad that he is on Kiev. I can imagine using that kind of mentality with Kiev's residents. But hey, I know things are ran differently over there. And besides, things are not as nice in Ukraine as Mr. Klitschko wants to think. Remember, Ukraine banned political parties. I'm going to give you some signs of tyranny, not of freedom. Banned certain political parties, certain media outlets. I have an article for that one. Certain minorities' rights, in this case, Hungarians and Romanians. I have an article. Peter Szijjártó, the foreign minister of Hungary, already requested to be investigated. Using their language, the freedom of using a language in school and at home and so on, that was kind of infringed, Mr. Szijjártó said. Then you have what? The religious, remember, a certain kind of denomination was phased out. The whole thing is like, you find in a car that something is wrong with the car, you ban the whole car. Not only the whatever was wrong with the car, the whole car. So that's another thing. So and I can go on and on with corruption. Look at the level of corruption in Ukraine. Look at many other things. But I think I mentioned enough to show that that country is not the beacon of freedom, and it shows a trend. So I don't think it will ever enter like that in the European Union or NATO. But with this weasel, everything is possible. I'm telling you why. Because I know when Romania was begging to enter into the European Union and NATO, they were looking at Romania overall like beggars. And they were coming, and Romanians were, please get us in. And I was, no, don't ask. Let them be. They will need you. Sooner or later, they will need you. But you talk with the politicians, with Romanians, what do you want? So then what happened over there? They said, no, we're not going to ban any standards. We're not going to drop. But for Ukraine, it's going to go down like here, so they can just step over it. But it's possible. Everything is possible if the boss wants. So I think this idea is wrong. And you put the Belarusians as well in it. You must be thinking that you really are pure to demand such a thing. I'm talking about Ukraine. I'm talking about all these countries that provide weapons to kill other people. even in self-defense, if you want to call it that way. They hit civilians on the other side as well. Remember those 10 or 12 prisoners of war, the Russians, that were mowed after they surrendered? No, you don't know? They destroyed infrastructure. One example is the Kerch Bridge. You say, no, it was not them. Okay. Anyway, so no, don't make the first step, because once you make the first step, everything opens in 10 other roads and steps. Look at COVID. Look at mandates. Look at all that. That's a step. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.